Hello everyone, and thank you for joining this Your Overseas Home webinar. My name's Rosie, I'm a senior copywriter at Your Overseas Home. Today we'll be chatting with Gillian Richards, a regional manager for Cyprus at Chase Buchanan, and we'll be discussing your financial considerations you should think about when moving to Cyprus. It's great to see so many of you with us today, whether you're watching live or on demand. So before you start your presentation, Gillian, I'd love to hear a little bit about you and what Chase Buchanan does.
Okay, so Chase Buchanan is a wealth manager, financial advisor, sort of like IFA in Cyprus. We look after lots of expat clients as well as Cypriot clients and other nationalities, people that actually live and reside in Cyprus. And we look after everything from UK pensions, from a taxation point of view, personal taxation point of view, savings, investments, like for retirement, education fees, that sort of thing. So we offer a full sort of portfolio service and financial advisory service. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit about me when we get into the presentation.
Okay, Fab, thank you. So basically this session is going to last half an hour. Gillian's going to share a presentation and then we'll open the floor up to questions. If you do have any questions as we go along, feel free to just pop them in the questions tab on the right hand side of your screen. We do hope to answer as many queries as we can today, but if we don't get around to them, don't panic. The questions will be forwarded to Gillian and her team at Chase Buchanan following the webinar. And yeah, so Gillian, over to you.
Thank you. So welcome everyone. Just a bit of background about myself. I am the regional manager for Chase Buchanan in Cyprus. I have worked in financial services for over 30 years in various situations. And for the last 13 years, I have been as an advisor in the offshore wealth management arena, and the last 3 years I have been in Cyprus. And I have to say, for those of you thinking of moving to Cyprus, there is no better place to go to. All right, we've settled very, very quickly here, myself and my husband, which really surprised us, and we're having a great time, and it is fabulous, and the weather is beautiful. I also work for a lot of charities, been on the board of charities, currently the treasurer for a couple of groups in Cyprus. And I've been the philanthropy chair previously for the 100 Women in Finance. And I still advise some of those boards that I was previously on. So enough about me, let's talk about Cyprus. So the first thing that you need to think about when you are seriously thinking about moving to Cyprus and you've made the decision to go is that it is important that you speak to a regulated financial advisor before you make that move. And that is because UK advisors will no longer be able to look after you or give you advice once you are in the EU. So you need to understand your savings and investment structures, UK pensions, because you need to know what your options are and what your options are when you move to Cyprus. So it is very different. So where you think you may get not pay tax in the UK, you may pay tax in Cyprus, or vice versa. Also, if you intend to sell your main residence in the UK, you really do need to think about getting that completed before you become a tax resident in Cyprus. And if you want more information specifically to yourself, then obviously contact me after the presentation. Cyprus wills. This is something that people do get confused with. If you are buying property in Cyprus, Cyprus has a forced heirship system. So if you are a divorced couple and you're buying property together and you each have children from previous relationships, you need to bear that in mind, because automatically your property will be set up so that half of you each that you each own half the property. So therefore your half will go to your heirs. So it is important that you do have a Cyprus will, as well as one, if you're from the UK, a UK will, and stipulate in the UK will that you wish to have your estate distributed under the laws of that country. Okay, that is very, very important. If you're buying property in Cyprus, your lawyer is likely to offer that setting up the Cyprus will as a part of the conveyancing as a freebie add-on, if you like. Personal income tax. If you are a tax resident in Cyprus for 183 days in one calendar year, now that is from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. That is the tax year in Cyprus. So if you are living in Cyprus for 183 days, you automatically become a tax resident in Cyprus. There is also a 60-day rule, and that 60-day rule is if you are moving around, so therefore you've got a property in the UK that you may rent out, or you may stay when you go back to visit family and friends, and you've got a property in Cyprus that you spend some time there, and then you're traveling. If you're here for 60 days, but you're not anywhere else for 183 days, you will by default become tax resident in Cyprus. If you are renting a property and you've got that lease because you're in and out of it, or if you own a property that you are in. So you do need to be careful just with that. I mean, if you're working as well, that will also be a tie to Cyprus. So you do need to think of that, because it's not just the 183 days, and quite a few people get caught out on the 60-day rule. And the tax rates in Cyprus are actually quite favourable. So if you earn up to 19,500, or sorry, your income is up to 19,500 euros, you do not pay any tax. And then it goes on a sliding scale upwards from then on. There is also, for foreign pension income, there is a flat rate tax of 5%, and that is on amounts over 3,420. Now, because it's 5%, a lot of people think, oh, well, yeah, well, that's the rate I want to be on. But you actually need to do the calculation, because the limit on the 5% is 3,420. But if your income is quite a lot higher than that, you may actually find that the 19,500 at the nil rate, and then going that way, is actually works out cheaper than being on the flat rate 5%. But as I said, it's a calculation that you need to do, and it's one, once you're in Cyprus, that we were very happy to help you with and talk you through. And we can also help you there with getting your tax identification number, and also for other taxing net for your tax return, so that sort of thing. So we can help you with all of that, but the important thing is that calculation to start off with at the beginning. From the 1st of January, there were some changes to the residency application for third country nationals. Now, because of Brexit, the UK is now a third country national. Okay, so if you're from the UK, you don't have an EU passport, you are a third country national. Now, there are quite a number of rules and regulations that you need to stick to. So things like having a valid passport that is valid for more than 3 months from when you put in your application, that sort of thing. The additional ones are now that you have to prove that you have annual income of 24,000 euros per annum. You do need to have a police check to show that you have a clear criminal record certificate. You need to have a medical examination for blood tests. So just to show that you do not have hepatitis B or C, HIV or syphilis. And those tests can be done once you have arrived in Cyprus. And you also need to have a chest X-ray to show that you do not have tuberculosis. Now, a lot of people talk to me about these requirements and, you know, think, well, actually, I'm coming from the UK and it's all okay. When I first went overseas in my role as a financial advisor 13 years ago, I had to have a chest x-ray to show that I did not have tuberculosis. So this is not anything new. There are a lot of countries that ask for this. And as I said, this is based on the UK not being in the EU anymore and being a third country national. So the EU residents, you fall into nationals, I should say, you fall into that category of third country nationals. And obviously there are lots of other countries that are in that third country national. And therefore those requirements apply to those other countries. And the EU now by default, as being the third country national, these rules apply to those nationals as well. So why would you buy a property in Cyprus? Well, I already mentioned at the very beginning what a lovely place it is to live, how easy it is to settle, the beautiful weather. On top of all of those things, there's lots of vineyards. So if you're into wine, there is lots of wine from different vineyards, all relatively, I'll say cheap, but, you know, like a couple of euros, depending where you go. And they do have expensive wines. So relative cost of living is quite low. If you have solar panels on your roofs, where a lot of properties they definitely do to heat water in the summer anyway. Electricity bills are actually quite low because with the solar panels, you're putting it back into the grid. So you're not really using electricity during the day to pay for. You are in the evenings. The quality of lifestyle is very good. There's plenty of tavernas that you can eat out at. It really depends on what you want to do. If you want to go to the supermarket where it has all the UK food that's imported, you want to drink wine from France and Italy, then there is obviously it's going to be an expense to that. But if you're drinking and eating the local produce, drinking local wines, out at the tavernas, eating Cypriot food, then it's a lot cheaper. But it really is down to each individual taste. Okay, and we do have McDonald's here if you've got children that want to come out, because I know they like having their little chicken McNuggets. Favourable policy now to obtain a permanent residency through purchase of property, which I will talk about on a separate slide because there's been some changes to that recently. If you look at the top destinations to retire to, Cyprus is up there. It's 4.5–5 hours from London to 4.5 hours from London to Paphos, a little bit longer if you're flying into Larnaca. Bristol, you probably say 5 hours, and then could be a little bit longer or shorter going back, depending which way the wind blows. And I'll talk on a separate slide about the immovable property tax for buying property, because that's relatively low as well. So all in all, there's lots of reasons to move to Cyprus. Capital gains tax. Capital gains tax is only payable on property. It's charged at 20%. With the first 17,086 euros being exempt for each person. But like lots of things in Cyprus, there's always extra add-ons to this. So an allowance is made for any transfer fees that have been paid, inflation, and any costs for extras that have been added to the property. So if you're building extensions, obviously that gets added on. If you've upgraded the property, those costs get added on as well, or should say get deducted from the actual amount. And also any gain of the property, it's exempt up to 85,430 euros, as long as you continuously live in the property for 5 years prior to the sale of the property. And it's these little bits that you just need to be aware of. So if you do buy a property and you make additions to the property, keep all those receipts, because that will all go towards the deduction of the capital gains tax when you come to sell the property. And if you are going to sell it, try and live in it for at least 5 years before you sell it, so you get that extra exemption as well. Annual property taxes and fees, local authority fees, anything from €85 to 500, and that really depends on where you live, the size of the property, and the services that are provided to you by the community. So if you think of that as like more like a council tax, but also add the municipality tax. Now, the municipality tax is based on the value of the property, but that property value is at the 1st of January 2013. And that is paid to your local authority. So it's the community charge, really. So again, if you add those two together, they are like your council tax. And for an example, where I live in Paphos district. It's a very large district. I live about 10 minutes from Paphos Airport, and I pay for my equivalent of council tax, €200 per year. Okay, and I know that my son, who lives on the Isle of Wight, pays a lot more than that. He pays a couple of £1,000. So I'm very lucky. Storage tax, again, that varies depending on where you live. And again, it's based on the property value of the 1st of January 2013. And that is where you are connected to main sewerage, because not all the properties are. Again, it depends where you live. If you live in one of the villages, the likelihood is you are not on main sewerage, but you will have your own septic tanks. And the septic tanks, don't panic. They are very well looked after. You probably only need to empty those tanks once every between 10 and 15 years, and the cost is €100. So again, you know, it is fairly cheap to live here. Stamp duty, important thing if you are buying property. It's very simple. Up to 5,000, you don't pay anything, and then it goes on a scale. And then over €170,000, it's at 0.20%. Sorry. Okay, so it works out a lot less in the UK. All right, so that's all of buying property. So what if you want to buy the property to get residency in Cyprus? So now these rules came into effect on the 2nd of May this year. There are quite a few changes. The one thing that everybody thought was going to change was actually the property value. Everyone was expecting that to rise to €500,000. It didn't. It stayed at €300,000. The couple of important things here is that firstly, it's to get the residency by buying property, residential property, you need to buy a new build. If you buy new build, regardless of the value or when you're here, you automatically pay 19% VAT. You will pay VAT. VAT is 19%. The property value needs to be at least €300,000 in order to meet that criteria to get permanent residency, or residency, I should say. Okay. The new changes are now is that you need to prove that you have €50,000 for the main applicant as annual income. So this is a new requirement. You also need to show, if it's you and a partner, spouse, you need to show you have an additional 15,000 for the spouse. Now that can be a joint figure. So if you've got 65,000, that's fine. If you've got children, minor children under the age of 18, And there are also rules if you've got children up to the age of 25 that are unmarried in full-time education, you need an extra €10,000 for each child. Okay. Now, the new requirement for these amounts here also bring in the fact that you also have to show this amount every year. Okay, so that is after you've lived permanently in Cyprus for 5 years, you can apply for permanent residency. And that is regardless of whether you've bought property for residency or you've gone through the temporary residency route. Okay, after 5 years, you can apply for permanent residency. So for every year for the up to those 5 years, you have to show that you have this income. Now, if the income is sitting in the bank, that's fine. If you've got income coming in and out, that's also fine. You just need to meet that requirement. Another rule that has actually been taken away from this is that previously you could bring your parents and in-laws with you under this residency. That is no longer acceptable. If you've got parents or in-laws that want to move to Cyprus, then they have to follow whichever residency route they want to go. If they want to go through the buying the property route, then they have to meet the criteria as well. It's only now, it's for yourself, your spouse, and any minor children. And again, you need to show that you've got a clear police check for a clear criminal record certificate. So again, you need that. And you also now have to sign a statement to certify that you do not intend to work in Cyprus, because this residency does not allow you to work. So you just need to be aware of that. We touched on the VAT on property. It is 19%. However, like lots of things, there are reductions and exceptions. So you can get a reduced rate of 5% if you buy the property, but it does need to meet this criteria. You need to live in it for 10 years. The applicant has not purchased another property at a reduced rate. So quite often people will buy a property to live in and then buy a property to rent out, and then decide they want to live in the property they bought to rent out because you can get more income from the bigger property. That's fine, but you'll only get the reduction in the VAT in one of the properties. The other thing is that you need to be over 18 years of age to buy the property, and then the 5% VAT is only applicable to the first 200 square meters area of the property. Okay, anything over that, you will then pay 19% VAT. All right. And the other thing, and I was just saying to Rosanna before we started the presentation, is that if you sell your property and you've paid the 5%, automatically a tax check is carried out on the owners of properties. So if you have gone for the reduced rate, but actually you can't prove that you've lived there, or you haven't had the property and lived in it for 10 years, and you can't prove that you've lived there for 10 years, you will be charged the extra 14% on the price of the property, and that will be deducted through your lawyer when you get the proceeds of your sale. So just be aware of that. And likewise, it's checked on your tax returns for the years that you've been tax resident in Cyprus. And again, you may, depending on your tax returns, you may or may not have a personal tax charge as well, which was deducted from the sale, the proceeds of the property. And then I just wanted to touch on the Cyprus healthcare system. It's very similar to the NHS. Below is it really, if you're working in Cyprus, if you're an employer, an employee, if you're self-employed, if you're a pensioner, or you've got rental income, etc., then these are the rates that you would pay. And this is deducted through the general health system through the tax return when you do your annual tax return. So if you've got income, whether you can use the system or not, you will pay a fee, a charge to pay into the general health system. Typically, you will get access to the health system if you're working and paying national insurance, social insurance, I should say, the equivalent of national insurance in the UK, or if you are in receipt of your UK state pension, you apply for a form which is called an S1. If you have an S1, then you will automatically, through your GP, be enrolled onto the general health system, YESI. Okay, and obviously there's you capped at contribution. So if you are working, or you're a high earner, or you've got lots of income coming in, you only pay up to the 180,000 euros. Okay, and that's my contact details, and that's basically it.
Thanks so much, Gillian. There's some really interesting things in there.
Glad you enjoyed it.
So we've got a bit of time left for questions now. Firstly, I wanted to ask the property value, where you said the municipality tax and the sewerage tax. You said that was based off the property value in 2013. Yes. What would be the case if it was a property built after that time?
Oh, good question. I actually don't know. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know. I could guess that they would probably look back for that type of property and the value back at that date, but I don't know. Send me that one and I will look at that.
No problem.
Yeah, nice easy one to start off with.
Sorry, that was mine as well. Okay, we have some questions from our viewers. Samantha asks, can you have 24,000 euros in a Cypriot bank account instead of showing the annual income?
Yes, you can. Yes. And when you actually come to, I have my notes here. Yes. And when you actually come to, where have I got it written down? Yeah, when you come to, so yes, if you've got that, that's absolutely great. That's perfect. But when you come for your first permit, as long as you can show that you've got money coming in to meet the 24,000, if you're only showing 10,000 euros in your bank account, that's fine, as long as you can prove the rest. But if you've got 24 there at the beginning, that's perfect.
Lovely. Similar question. Ashley asks, does the minimum income requirement of 24,000 euros apply to category F retirees? She says she's seen some websites state 9,426 euros or thereabouts per annum.
Okay, I think a lot of this on, I've seen a lot of this yesterday, funnily enough, on Facebook, and it wasn't euros, it was in Cypriot pounds. So this was a long time ago. The coming in now on the temporary residency, if you are a third national, it's 24,000 euros.
Okay. Caroline asks, annual property taxes and fees. I'm assuming this is for someone who's renting out. She's asking who pays the taxes and fees. Is it the lessor or the lessee?
It's the person who owns the property, so the lessor.
Okay, so the owner, no problem. Yeah. Right, Robert asks, we're coming over from the UK on my husband's Irish passport. Rest of us have British passports. My 18-year-old autistic son is coming with us. He won't be earning. Is there an issue here?
No, there won't be an issue. The husband who has the Irish passport is an EU citizen, so he can come here straight away. The rules are slightly different for spouse and children of a EU. So the best thing to do is to speak to either an immigration company or an immigration lawyer, and they will sort that out for you because the criteria is slightly different.
Okay, just off the back of that, it's reminded me the section where you said that under 18 dependents are included in that.
Yeah.
Is it the same if you have a dependent who's over 18 but has a disability?
Yeah, that's fine. But because it's something a little bit out of the ordinary, that's why you need to go through an immigration lawyer or an immigration company, because they will have the set criteria from the ministry, so they'll be able to help more on that.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's not a problem. It's just that they ask for
a bit more specific.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike asks, what about applying for temporary? I think that was meant to be a temporary residency with a view to permanent residency, as this wasn't covered.
Okay, so it's if you come to Cyprus, forget about buying the property. You will only be getting temporary residency. All right. So the 24,000, that is a temporary residency for 12 months. You have to renew it every 12 months. Once you've been a resident in Cyprus for 5 years, and you can prove that you've been here for 5 years through electricity bills, leases, bank accounts, that sort of thing, then you apply for permanent residency.
Okay. I think we've got time for one more question. Simon's asked, what if you've already purchased land and intend to build on it in the near future? How does it affect the residency? For context, he intends to build a bungalow on his residency. How does that affect the residency rules?
Okay, so how did he buy the land in the first place?
I think he's just bought the land, but intended to. So it regards as it like a new build. He wants to new build, yeah. It's
one of these that's a little bit outside the norm. But yeah, if you bought the land, then there is a record of. Sorry, did you say it was Simon?
Yes.
Simon. So there will be a record that Simon owns this land. Okay, so that cost will be taken into the cost to build the property. So he could do it that way. And obviously, as he's going and buying bits and pieces, he'll be paying the VAT as he's going on top of that. So as long as the value at the end is over 300,000, and that's with everything in together, there won't be a problem if he's going that way.
Okay, well, I think that's about all we've got time for today. Thank you so much, Gillian, for all your insightful tips and advice.
Okay.
For everyone listening.
Sorry, and I was just going to say, you're welcome to come to Cyprus at any time.
Oh, lovely. I'll take you up on that. We strongly recommend to all our viewers to get in touch with Chase Buchanan directly. You'll be able to discuss your requirements in detail, especially if it's a bit more outside the box. We'll be in touch with their details shortly, or alternatively, you can look at Gillian's contacts there. Before we finish, I would like to invite you to leave us a review on Trustpilot if you found this webinar helpful. Thanks again, and happy property hunting in Cyprus. It's great to see you today. Thanks, Gillian.
Okay, bye.
Bye.